So, after taking Patrick Troughton's advice and just doing 3 years, Peter Davison decided to step down after his third season. Well, in the penultimate serial of his final season. See, he didn't actually finish the season. His successor, Colin Baker, did. So yes, Peter Davison had stepped down after 3 years, and they decided to wrap his final season up with the, well, new Doctor. So, after Peter Davison left, the next Doctor, of course, to take over was actor Colin Baker. Now, I've explained before, Doctor Who is no stranger to reusing actors for other serials and different roles. And of course, Colin Baker, he was probably the first actor to be reused, to be recast as the lead. See, Colin Baker had appeared in the 1983 serial The Arc of Infinity in another role, and he returned, well, a year later in 1984 as the Sixth Doctor, taking over the last serial, The Twin Dilemma. So, yeah, Colin Baker got the part like he wanted to when he was given his first role in Doctor Who. And yeah, he took over for Peter Davison instantly. He then played his character from, because before Peter Davison's Doctor was meant to be exhausted by the regeneration, this time Colin Baker wanted to be hyper and wacky. And of course, he did inherit companion Perry Brown, played by Nicola Bryant. So, with Colin Baker now in the role, he needed an outfit. Now, a lot of actors, especially probably nowadays, tend to get a say in their costumes, what to wear and stuff. But Colin Baker didn't really get much of a say. When they asked him what they want his costume to be, he requested that he wear black to give him some mystique. But John Nathan Turner, running the show, decided, the Doctor is meant to be witty, wacky, and wild. So the costume designer just got a bit of colours, scribbled them on a bit of paper, and said, "What, like this?" And John Nathan Turner was like, "Exactly." So unfortunately, Colin Baker didn't get much of a say in his costume, and it was a mismatch coat that looked like something Chubby Brown would wear, or something from Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. But yeah, that became the Sixth Doctor's look. Although Colin Baker didn't like the costume, it has become strongly associated with the Sixth Doctor's appearance. I mean, he didn't dress seriously, but this is where the show would get into some dark territories. Of course, Colin Baker kind of made history by attacking his companion post-regeneration in one scene in The Twin Dilemma. But then, after that one serial of him being introduced and stuff, we then got the following season the next year. So, 1985. The show went back to its Saturday tea time slot, and this time with the serial Resurrection of the Daleks in the previous season being 2 parts and a 45-minute runtime, given, scheduling conflicts with the football, the 1984 Euro. John Nathan Turner thought, let's just air these episodes as 2 parts and 45 minutes each instead of the 4 parts. Well, the following year in 1985, they decided, let's, make the show that. Make it, try it out this season. 45-minute episodes that are 2-parters. So, 1985, Colin Baker made his first proper season Well, his first season began with Attack of the Cybermen, where the Cybermen would return after a 3-year absence. And, yeah, it was also partly sequel to Resurrection of the Daleks, as some foes returned from that previous year, posing as policemen. And we got many other serials, Vengeance of Varos, Time and the Rani, Mark of the Rani, The Three Doctors. Yeah, in that year as well, Patrick Troughton returned with Fraser Hines as the second Doctor and Jamie in a 3-part serial called The Two Doctors, which was written by Robert Holmes. And yeah, Patrick Troughton returned, And yeah, his hair had gone grey by then. He was 65 after all. But he, returned, and this would also be his swan song as the Second Doctor. As 2 years after this episode aired, he would pass away in during an American convention in 1987. But still, it was great seeing the Second Doctor return, and the second and sixth Doctor's paths cross. And this one, it wasn't caused by a time overlapping or anything like that. It was pure coincidence. Like the Doctor said, when you travel in time, you're bound to run into yourself at some point, and I like that concept of that serial. This was also the last time the Centaurans would make their appearance in the classic era, and also following that, we would have the Daleks. The Sixth Doctor fighting the Daleks in his first season. With Davros. A lot more darker and morbid, that one, Revelation of the Daleks. And of course, we would get a few serials here and there. We get the Master, the Sixth Doctor Encounter the Master. And yeah, the show returned with its new season. And was it good? Well, yes, but there was rays of concern. See, the show got a bit gritty. A lot of people were complaining about the violence of the show, saying it had become too violent. In Attack of the Cybermen, there's a scene where the Cybermen crush a guy's hands and you can see blood. Although kids were fascinated by it, parents were not so impressed. Also, there was that whole cliffhanger of the Doctor laying lifeless in the sand on Vengeance on Varos as a cliffhanger, thinking, ooh, I don't like that. And of course, about 9 years before in the serial The Deadly Assassin, there was a cliffhanger in that serial where the Doctor was drowning, and that episode ended there of him being drowned, and people would have to wait a whole week. That caused a bit of stir and controversy. So yes, the show was seen as too violent, and they were threatening to take the show off air for 18 months. And yeah, the planned serial for the following year was pretty much scrapped. Planned serials, one that I know of called The Nightmare Fair, which would have featured the return of the Toymaker, was scrapped, but would see the light of day in a novelization and audio adventure. But yes, Colin Baker's first season was seen as too violent, and no one approved of that. And of course, John Nathan Turner came up with the idea. The show is on trial. Why don't we put the Doctor on trial? Managing to get the show renewed for another season, they thought this time let's have this season, run as one long continuous serial for 14 weeks. Going back to the 25-minute slot and having 14 episodes air, the show Doctor Who was then the serial Trial of the Time Lord, which would air for 14 weeks and would be written by various writers. Still, all having their own sort of serialized thing in there, like The Ultimate Foe and some other stuff. This also saw the exit of Perry Brown, Nicola Bryant as Perry, who had a rather bleak fate. But it was revealed in the finale that she was safe and started a new life with the Warrior King that they met in that serial. We would still get new adventures as the Doctor was on trial. We would see into his mind of the Matrix, and we would see adventures he had with Perry. And then halfway into the season, Perry was replaced by companion Mel Bush, played by Bonnie Langford, who has made returns in the recent eras of the show. Now, Bonnie Langford only got the role because John Nathan Turner heard her on Alton Towers' ride, and she screened really good, and he was impressed by that. Now, Mel Bush, I gotta say I didn't really like her. I always found her irritating because the screaming, but she's improved a lot in the revival era, which I say that's another episode for another time. So yeah, the Doctor was on trial, and then seems that he was being framed by the Master, but also another infamous Time Lord villain, the Valeyard, which turned out to be the Doctor in his 13th or 12th regenerations. And of course, they would enter the Matrix where they would face the Valiard and stuff. Valiard, Terrence Dix did say in an interview, Valiard meaning Doctor of Law, in case you didn't know that. And of course, Colin Baker, this unaware as well that this would be his final season, because at that time, Colin Baker was probably the shortest serving Doctor. Of course, things got back on track. John Nathan Turner managed to get the show renewed for another season, and but they would not want it with Colin Baker. That was the condition. The show can come back for another season, but it can't be with Colin Baker. So John Nathan Turner had to break the news to him, saying that we're sorry, but your services are no longer required. Colin Baker, angered by this, didn't want to do regeneration. That's all they wanted him to come back for, to just do an on-screen regeneration. But enraged by this, he left, not filming a regeneration. And of course, Colin Baker had plans to stay on a lot longer, hoping, he could maybe be like the next Tom Baker by doing a long term, but unfortunately that was not the case, as the show faced a lot of trouble in the mid-80s. Not saying that Colin Baker or Sylvester McCoy were bad doctors, I don't think they were at all, it was just the right guys at the wrong time. So anyway, Colin Baker left, and they had to find another actor quickly. They auditioned through 3 possible actors, with Janet Fielding doing some screen tests with 3 potential actors, and the one that impressed them the most was former kids entertainer from Tiswas, Percy James Patrick Kent Smith, better known to everyone, of course, as Sylvester McCoy. So, on his first day, they had to improvise and have the Doctor already regenerating at the beginning of the next serial, The Time and the Rani. And all they did was dress Sylvester McCoy in Colin Baker's costume, put on a terrible blonde wig, and then have them find the Doctor already regenerating and have that explained. Of course, Colin Baker would get the proper send-off he needed in the audio adventures, The Sixth Doctor's The Last Adventure, which was for big fish, but that's another episode for another time, of course. But yes, Sylvester McCoy took over as the 7th Doctor in 1987, and the show would continue for, well, right up until the end of the 80s, because of course this only delayed the inevitable of the show's cancellation. And despite McCoy getting the show back on track with viewing figures and stuff, it would still be the end of the road.